Howdy neighbors, welcome back to the channel. We have a two-part episoder for you guys today. So we have this video and we have hopefully another video. Unless I get lazy and I put two together, but I'm probably not going to do that. So one of our cool community people from our Cardfight Vanguard ended up going to Worlds this year. Not my direct community, but us as card fighters went to Worlds playing a very unconventional style of deck. KJ made it to Worlds playing Dark Irregulars, known as one of the most prominent premium card fighters when it comes to everything Dark Irregulars. Of course, we got Morgan, we still got Masanori, who also ended up going to Worlds this year. Morgan is a very good player in her own right as well, and I hope that you guys enjoy KJ's profile. Few of you have been asking for some updated profiles from our 25 days of premium for some of your lists, and now that the restriction list is now live, we're going to be having to navigate a whole new landscape of premium, and hopefully this guide can help you guys out. If you like our content, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll put KJ's contacts or Discord information in the description below, so if you guys want to contact him and talk all things premium, he'll be sure to help you guys out. Take care.
Hello everyone, my name is KJ, and today I'm going to go through my premium Gastille list. I am essentially the pioneer of Gastille in terms of its tops. I'm the first person who's tops with it multiple times. From Springfest to BRO to more recently BCS. I came third place with this list. That's on Vanguard Paradox. That's with Hope on Damp, so obviously this is an updated version. And my friend Masanori, huge shout out, he also came third place in his regionals. Me in Cardiff, United Kingdom, him, I believe it was one of I think it was France, don't quote me on that, but his list should also be on VG Paradox, which was my list. But I'm going to go through two different lists. We both topped in our regionals, so we both entered Japan World Championship last week. We both decided to actually play Gastille. We played two very different builds. So the first build I'm going to show you is a build that I prefer, and the other build is something that he prefers, something that we both worked on, we both talk on constantly, basically. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is my updated list. So, the most important thing is that we have to run 4 copies of Gastille. We just have to see it, hopefully by turn 3. This is a blind second build. You want to go second because you want to get the quick shield and golden shield. You want to incentivize your opponent to give you damage. Like, unless someone's played against you multiple times, or they're playing a very specific build, most of the time they're just going to give you damage. They're not going to pass turn unless they have a very good reason, and that's what this build kind of plays towards. Which against random people in events, it's always a good thing. Rarely anyone will damage deny you, but you need to see 4 copies of you need to see Gastille. That's why running 4 copies is very important. If you I considered 3, but it's just too important to see, so that's why 4 is really vital. There are ways that you can just get rid of multiple copies, but I would, like you could use Fugilan, you could discard it for costs like PGs or stuff like that. But so it's never a really dead card. So this is the only rideable grade 3 that we're running aside from Heal Guardians. Also, I'm running Radiance Caliburn. The most important part of this card, or why I run it, I thought initially it was the draw 2, because draw 2 is nice. The problem with the draw 2 is that it's very random what you draw. You could just draw 2 triggers, and you're like, well, that was a waste. But the actual countercharge and put itself into soul, the countercharge aspect during the main phase, when you do not have generation break, is really good. that counter charge could be the difference between getting, I don't know, 19 soul or 20 soul, 17 soul or 20 soul when you want to be able to get 20 soul. Because we'll go through the other counter boss cards in the deck to explain that further. But the on-demand counter charge is pretty good. I'm actually going to go through the triggers first, grade 0s, grade 1s, and grade 2s, because the subsequent grades will talk about the previous grade's usage. I'll explain in a second. So obviously we got the V starter. I mean, pretty box standards. You know, you want to be able to draw one. You get the quick shields. Don't need to explain that. One copy of Enigmatic Assassin. We can only run it as one. With Hope on Damp Bands, making numbers is really important. You could use this early game to pressure your opponent and put into Soul from Covetous, which I'll talk about later. Boosting it behind a Vanguard like a Gastille swing or the 4-fact swing when you Superior Stride means that you're either making them no guard or guard uncomfortably. Like sometimes you want to force them to Sanctitudes so that your rear guards won't be Sanctituded, basically, because that's the only way they're going to be able to perfect guard. So we're running what I think is mandatory, 4 Heal Guardians. I was considering at one point the resource heal, the bind itself to with a heal to soul charge, counter charge. But the problem is that heal guardians are just too important. You need to be able to survive your opponent's onslaughts of attacks. For example, if they're playing like some sort of Excel clan and they do history collection where you just need to be able to survive, or if they damage deny you, calling it to give yourself a damage is pretty good. Like I 100% recommend running 4 copies of this is vital. The next one is 4 copies of the damage draw crit. Because you're going to be taking damage, drawing is so important. And the fact when you drive check it, you do not draw is also quite important because you want to have that crit to drive check. The other triggers I think is mandatory is 1 copy of the yellow OT. Now this is really, really important to run. At all points of the game, it's really, really good. Seeing it early game when your opponent has no rear guards means that you draw 4 cards, 1 from the OT effect and 3 from them having 6 open circles, which is 1 guardian circle and 5 rear guard circles. So that makes 6. And it could also like kill your opponent's rear guards, retire them, so that could be quite frustrating depending on what they're playing. Or during your kill turn, because they can't use auto effects, it means that if they guard the Gastille or 4-fact swing with say OT to pass, for example, you drive check the OT, you retire their guardians, and you can give the 100 million to a rear guard safely. And because it says draw up to the amount of 2 open circles 2 open like rear guard or guardian circles they have, you're not going to worry about Deckcode. This is just, in my opinion, the best OT to run in this deck. OT is still OT, so it's still random. Don't get me wrong. But between this, you could run the red OT, but the red OT is really only good during the kill turn. That's why I prefer this one. You could run the Dark States OT as well. That's not a bad shout, but I think this is definitely the best one. Now, the other thing I would also recommend running is 2 copies of the Draw PG. Sometimes having that perfect guard like early, when you just have that 1 perfect guard, because you're not generating protect markers, it's quite good to consider basically. Drawing, having 6 different ways, or 7 different ways of drawing a card when you damage check them is also pretty important because you're very piece reliant. So, I mean, looking at all of these are all the best damage checks, even the heal triggers. So that's self-explanatory. I'm only running 2 Sentinels, by the way. This is really important. By the time you're trying to kill your opponent, you only care about having like 1 or 2 Sentinels by that point. I would say that running 4 Sentinels is actually more of a brick. You'll notice that the cards in this deck that I've chosen to run are to alleviate bricking as much as possible. Now these are the optional ones. Now, in case you are playing a slow game, 2 copies of the Stride crits, in case you need to ride and strides. 6 crits is just a good number to make your opponent guess how many crits you're running. but also to return enough crits from fallbacks, because you need to return 3 crits basically, and 3 copies of Monochrome of Nightmare Land. Again, stand trigger really good during your kill turn, so if it's in deck, fantastic. If you're playing a slow game because they're damage denying you, you might stride into Harmonics and then be able to have this live. This is really good. But these are the triggers basically. Now for the grade 1s. With regard to the grade 1s, the most mandatory card that any Dark Irregular build should run is 4 copies of Fugilin. What can I say about this card? I mean, it does everything. It works on Vanguard Circle and Rearguard Circle. It's once per turn, so you can use it you can use it multiple turns basically. Put a card from hand into soul to draw 1. Your opponent chooses 1 card from their hand, puts it into soul, and then they may draw 1 afterwards. It's basically a brick fixer. If you have like a spare copy of Gastille in hand, you could just shove it into soul, draw 1. If you have a crit in hand, if you have assassin in hand, putting those into soul, pretty good. Bog standard, really. The one thing that I have concerns about this is that sometimes it does help the opponent because you're giving them soul, you're allowing them to fix your hand. But we have to consider that Dark Irregulars, especially in the way they play now, over the last few years, is very much a solitaire-focused clan. They, especially with decks like NLK and Gastille, not for Dantarian as much, even though Dantarian still runs this, you care more about fixing your hands than fixing your opponent's hand. And then if you have like multiple copies of this early game, like 2 or 3, and your opponent has 6 or more soul, then the second part of the skill is absolutely insane. It's one of the best snowballs in this clan, where if they have at least 6 cards in soul at the beginning of the battle phase, soul charge 1, you may soul charge 1, and give 5k to one of your units, which is insane, especially because the one thing that's very important in this build is that you need to be able to rush early game. You want to push into high damage counts so that by the time you ride Gastille, you're making it so that they can't get as many defensives to shut off your turn, because defensives, especially defensive OT, is probably what stops you from winning the game. So rush. That's what this build is. It's supposed to try to rush your opponent as much as possible. Very similar to my BCS build where I came top 3, running 4 copies of Edge in the Darkness. Just really good. It has that Fugian effect, but on Vanguard Circle where you draw 1, put 1 from hand to soul, which is pretty good in my opinion. The main thing I like this though is that when placed on Rearguard Circle, soul charge 1, and then if it's placed by card ability, you counter charge 1, which is really important. There are at least 3 cards in the deck, I believe they're all in the grade 2 lineup, which call cards by effects. So if you call Edge in the Darkness, by countercharging 1, you have that 8k body for free, so you can enable more rush potential. That's why this is at 4 copies. Yep, so that's Edge in the Darkness. And recent inclusion in the deck, which I think is very important to run because Hope on Damp is banned, is this card, Ammon's Follower, Atrocious Blow. So it's got the yellow bottle effects where you can rest on Rearguard Circle to soul charge 1, and then the second part of that skill is why I'm including this, where after doing that action of rest of soul charge 1, you can choose one of your Ammon units on board, and it gains 1k for every card in soul, which is really important. Now these are the only Ammons I'm running. Oh, sorry, these ones. So you're pretty much giving the power to Fugina. One thing you can do is you can have Fugina maybe in the front row or in the back row behind a Vanguard, for example. You put in the front row if you have like a stand triggered deck that you might be able to get. If you don't have a stand trigger, then maybe putting it behind as a booster is pretty good. If you have 21 cards in soul, so let's say you have 20 cards in soul, you call this, you rest it, soul charge 1, give this 21k. If you call this behind Gastille, 8 plus 21 is 29, plus Gastille's 12k base is 41. 41k column, double crits, cannot use auto effects, is kind of insane. They're pretty much going to no-god it, or guard a lot of cards from hand to stop the attack, because they're not going to want to take 2 damage. But the high power aspect of a card like this, an Assassin, is what replaces Hope on Damp. Not the best fix, but this is what we lived it with, so it's not too bad. Yeah, so those are the grade 1s. Now for the grade 2s. Now this is actually the most interesting slot. There's a lot of grade 2s I'm running, and they all have their own unique uses. Now, the most important grade 2s to run, and what makes Dark Regulars in general just really, really good, is this grade 2 called Covetous Succubus. This is insane. I mean, this is absolutely broken on paper. Why is it broken? So when it attacks, if you have at least 6 cards in Soul, you can move a rearguard to Soul to countercharge 1, and then the broken part of the skill is when you have at least, and then if you have at least 10 cards in Soul after doing this action, draw 2, put 1 from hand into Soul. Now the reason why this is really strong, so basically in a nutshell, you want to use this on attack when you have 9 cards in Soul, because you swing with it, you move a rearguard to Soul, so you go from 9 to 10, so both skills will proc where you countercharge 1, draw 2, put 1 from hand into Soul. The reason why this is so good is because you're putting 2 cards into Soul, 1 from rearguard and 1 from hand, both of which are selective Soul Charge 2. So you're choosing what goes into Soul. It could be another copy of Gastille, it could be a crit, could be a rearguard that you just spun with, essentially like that. And also draw 2 means that you're fixing your hand a lot more. Insane. I recommend trying to get this live as soon as possible, basically. So, cards that work around this, basically. Now the next one, which also was in my BCS build, is 4 copies of Forward and Reverses. This card is also really, really good. On place, Soul Charge 1, gains 5k. The fact that it's 15k beat stick by itself, no cost, is pretty good. And then optionally, you can counterboss 1 to activate 1 or 2 skills. The one you're going to activate the most is to, so on place counterboss 1 to call a grade 2 or less from Soul, call a Covetous, call a Fugilin, to fix your hands, call Demontids if you have extra counterboss and you want a Soul Charge, which I'll go through this in a second. There's so many good targets. Like you could call Edge in the Darkness to countercharge 1. You could call Atrocious Blow to make big powers. And then if you have Generation Break when the game is like being a bit longer, calling Monochrome is kind of insane because you refund the counter blast immediately from Reversus and return a stand trigger to deck basically. Yeah, really good. And the other part of this, so you could call a grade 2 or less from Soul, or retire grade 2 or greater. Now this is rarer, I'll admit, it's not as common, but there are some matchups where it matters. For example, against Dimension Police, where Gma Glass gives the grade 3s intercept and shields. So retiring those rearguards means that you make it a lot easier to break through. Getting rid of intercepts is quite important, basically. And I also run 1 copy of, this is an optional choice in my matter, Vadrock. Now Vadrock is basically just the 5th copy of Reversus because it's a very similar thing of on-play Soul Charge 1, counterboss 1, call a grade 2 or less from Soul. That's a different name to this. And then I'm not gonna have a blank to my Vanguard so the card returns to Soul. One strategy that I like the idea of is to call this, use a skill, call Covetous. Covetous, well, both of them swing, so obviously this first, and then Covetous. Covetous move Vadrock to Soul, and then end of turn Covetous goes back into Soul, so your front row is empty. So that means they cannot damage deny you by just going Vanguard to rearguard, which is what some decks will just do to damage deny as much as possible. They have to either pass turn or just suck it up and give you damage. So, but basically this is the 5th copy of Reversus. Other grade 2s I'm running are 3 copies of Demonted Executioner. It's basically the way to get 20 Soul. The Soul Charge 3 and then potentially draw 1 if you Soul Charge a trigger is pretty good. If they rush you, then this is a good way to rush to 20 souls as quickly as possible. That's why I think it's quite important. And this is an interesting one. 3 copies of Poisonic Abductor. Now this going second is good because you can discard the quick shield as an easy cost, or just discard like a random card like a spare copy of Gastille, or just if you have to do a trigger or whatever. This is a consistency fixer. So basically, you can use it to call Covetous, to call Fugilan, Edge in the Darkness, Atrocious Blow, even Demonted if all three are still in deck. It's basically to filter your deck as much as possible, so that you make the consistency happen. One thing I like to do is if they give you one Cannibals, Ride Abductor, Cannibal Spawn, discard one so you have 0 face-up Cannibals, choose Edge in the Darkness, put 3 copies into Soul, 2 copies into Soul, call the third one, and then you countercharge that Cannibals you just used, which means that Cannibals you can use for something like Revertus, Vaidrock, or the other one is Demonted. That's it. So that means you've just used 2 Cannibals when you only have 1 damage. That's why I think this is a very, 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 very good card. And that's why Edge in the Darkness must be a 4 of if you're running Abductor. You need that countercharge as consistently as possible. I think what's worth mentioning is basically the Gastille effects of Cannibal Spawn, beginning battle phase, your opponent chooses one of the 4 effects. You want to have 20 cards in Soul because then they're forced to choose all 4 effects, which are the Gastille player's front row gains a crit, the Gastille's opponent's Vanguard power goes down to 1, the opponent has to choose 1 card from hand, put it face down to damage zone, and the important one in my opinion is none of their auto abilities can activate until end of turn, which means it's pretty much stopping PGs or interruption. It's like Ladder in a way, Bracing Angel Ladder. The inspiration behind me playing this in the first place is because my friend who played Narukami double or triple G-guarded into Impede Dragon, which disrupted my board when I was playing at NLK back then. I got so annoyed that I looked into Gastille and it stopped him from doing that because it stops him from using the auto effects. So, and then I took it to events and then I just randomly decided to become serious with it. And I just enjoy it ever since because it's a really fun deck to deck build, and it's also a really fun deck to play with because even though it's quite solitaire, I mean a lot of Vanguard decks are solitaire, you have to kind of plan a few turns in advance and anticipate a few things your opponent might do, whether they damage deny you, rush you, and kind of go from there. In terms of the G-Zone, now G-Zone is a weird one because in this build you're not really going to like stride or G-Guard as much unless they damage deny you. The only thing that's really important is Harmonix Messiah and Forfax, your Superior Stride. These are the 2 most important cards in this specific build because this is the one that's like after your Gastille swung, you could be like, aha, Cannibal Swan, discard 5, your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, so you have at least 13 Soul, Superior Stride it, resend the Vanguard, and return up to 3 crits from Soul back to deck. It's really strong, especially when they can't use autos, because then it means like when you have a 4 card, so let's say you have a 1 card deck, you return 3 crits, you go to a 4 card deck, you're guaranteed on the swing to see at least 2 crits in those drive checks, which is really scary. And there's more chances to see like a stand trigger or just see other triggers in general. These are the most important cards. Other things are optional. I mean, like I run another copy of Gastille, not Gastille, of Forfax. Very rare. Most of the time it's just to ride it. Stride into it just to return 3 crits. Garvans, if you bricks quite heavily, and you just need a soul charge really badly, I avoid this as much as possible because random soul charge 5 I don't particularly like. Progenitus is pretty good against certain decks that have rear guards on boards, and it's a main phase soul charge 5, which is pretty good as well. I don't know how you get to this point, but 2 copies of Belamass, 2 copies of Balam. I surprisingly strode into this a lot more often than I thought in my regionals. I think it's because I did play against Gizeh, And it's good against Gizeh because it's like you're trying to increase drive checks as much as possible, not soul charging too much. Yeah, so it's not too bad. Those are all the strides. Mouse, I didn't really say much, but it's basically because, well, I mean, returning the over trigger or returning triggers is, is still pretty good. But I think with Hope and Damp banned, this card doesn't really do that much pressure. Unless you get the over trigger, which, it is what it is. G-Gods. This is probably the most important G-Gods. The minus crit G-Gods, when put on Guiding Circle, Counterboss 1. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards for every 10 cards in Soul, and those units lose 1 crit till end of turn. Pretty good. The end of turn aspect means that you can just be like, oh, minus crit the Vanguard. Then you can no-guard the Vanguard pretty easily, and they're reliant on seeing crits to pressure you. Dismal, mostly to protect certain rear guards like Cavatus. They can't just swing into it. Vincent, extra shields, I guess, when you have at least 15 cards in Soul. It's 30k shield total. Soul Charge 2 from Agrabah Mallet is pretty good. Saint Germain to gain 10k shield and giving resist to your units. It's rare, but against Dimension Police, if they use Linker, then you could Perfect Guards and then G Guards into this, choose your Perfect Guards, and it gets resist, so they can't retire the PGs, which means that you can play a longer game against Dimension Police. You're not forced to kill them in one turn. What's very important is that most matchups, the survivability of this deck is quite hard to do against certain decks, so you're trying to kill them quickly, but Dimension Police is like one of those few decks that you're not going to die very quickly because of this sort of G-Guards. And Druge, this just gains 10k shield. This is optional, you don't need to run this. Yeah, and that's the deck profile. I'll very quickly go into the other. Oh, hang on, sorry. One thing I forgot. So there are a bunch of other options you can run in this build. I'm still testing as we speak. I just got back from Worlds quite recently, and I've been flooded with work as well. So it's my first day that I've kind of got a bit of free time. On hit strides. If they damage deny you, then just striding this to Soul Charge 2, draw 1 is, it's alright, it's fine. I prefer to stride into Harmonics, because then it means that they can't just damage deny me again. So they have to give me that 1 damage, or allow me to just draw 1 from Harmonics. Other options is this Order, Halo of Bonds, Solidaire Bangle. Now this is really good with this new card, Filia, which is a Shenri clone. I did try this, where when it boosts, if your opponent has 1 less rear guards, or you played an Order this turn, gains 5k, and end of battle, you may put into Soul to draw 1. So it's really good for early game pressure. I think it's just space, really. I mean, you can test it and see if you like it. You could call it from Reversus, and it's a 28k column, I believe, which is pretty good. Another one and this is just like it's kind of like it does 2 things. It fixes your consistency because it lets you look at top 3, and you add one of those top 3s to hand. And also, if your deck size is really low, you can stack the bottom 3 cards, or /2 cards, so that you guarantee what you're drive checking. Obviously, there's a bit of RNG there. The 2 problems with this card is that if you see a card in the top 3, and you have no way of shuffling, and it's stuck at the bottom of the deck like the Overtrigger, then it does suck a bit. And also, you -1 by playing this, because you have to put 1 card from hand to Soul, and add 1 to hand, but you're playing this, so you're minusing 1. Other options to consider is Shegra. This was really good when Hope on Damp was around because it was a way to add damp to hand, but the reason I would run this is not because of the Counterblast discard to add a card from hand skill, but just when placed, at least 13 cards in Soul, 5k front row. Which during a Gastille turn, if you're able to use like 2, for example, Persona Ride, essentially. It's Persona Ride vibes, it gets 10k to the current front row. I think this is a really good option to consider. Another one to consider is the Ride Fixer. fixes your early game. Has a decent skill. The reason why I took it out for now is because it is kind of a dead card after turn 2. So it's really only good in the early game. So the amount of times, for example, you might see this like on turn 3, you're like, well, this does nothing for me. Then yeah, it's a bit iffy because this could be this could have been like a Demonted, for example, that would have soul charged during the main phase to be able to get the 20 soul. But I still think it's a really solid option if you really, really care about like fixing your early game, like Sifu Gideon or stuff like that. Now the other one, which is interesting to consider, is this Doppelvampire. It's similar to Baleful Oppressor, where when Generation Break 1, when it attacks, if you have at least, just need to remember actually, when you have at least 6 or more cards in Soul gains 5k, but the important part is when you have at least 50 more in Soul, your opponent cannot use grade zeros. So what you do is Superior Stride into 4 facts, so you have that Generation Break 1, and then you just put all crits on this and just try and kill them. It means they can't use the OT to guard against this, they can't guard with triggers. Yeah, it's just like that basically. It's an option that I need to test more of. I haven't had much chance. Like I would say 1 or 2 max, because it is technically a brick, but it depends on the current meta basically. Other things to consider, this is a card I run in BCS, Squeezer. This card is kind of a goat. I like it. It's got 2 skills that both increase your soul by 1 without reducing your deck size. So one thing I like about this is that it's on place to put a normal unit from drop zone to the bottom of the deck, and you may soul charge 1, which is kind of important because sometimes you just want to return a card to the bottom and not soul charge 1 because of deck size issues, which was very good against Fenrir, the Mill Fenrir variant. But with that deck banned, it's not as impactful. But the other part of the skill that I like is in drop zone you can bind it to move a rearguard to soul. Most of the time you're using on-place skills like Demonted, Abductor, and they're just dead on rearguard circles, so just using this to put into soul is really good. And almost done. Quenlu. So Quenlu is pretty funny with Doppelvampire, because Quenlu has a skill put itself into soul, give 2k to a rearguard, and if you have at least 7 cards in soul, the battles of that rearguard swings, you cannot guard with, they cannot guard with grade 1s or greater, so these two together means they cannot guard from hand normally, so they can only G-guard, use orders, or intercept, which is pretty funny. The only issue I have with this combo is that A, it's piece reliant, and B, it's 1 rearguard swing, so unless you get like stand triggers, then it is really good, but otherwise they could just save a Sanctitude for this or just take it. So, but it is an interesting option to test out. And the last one is the D series going to Soul Crit. This is just more for like, it can replace the Stride Crit, for example. You want to ensure that you get the 9 Soul for Cavitas, but that's the most important thing. Thank you very much for watching my deck profile on Gastille. My blind second builds. When I say blind second, I mean like you always want to go second. So if you win a dice roll, you go second. If your opponent wins a dice roll, they're most likely wanting to go first, so you're going to go second anyway. If you have any like specific queries, I have my Discord is just KJ. You'll know that it's me because you'll see this as my avatar. Shout out to Masanori for giving me this. What a chat. Yeah, and I'm very happy to answer any specific queries, whether it's matchups, whether it's specific combos, rulings, anything like that. I hope you have a lovely day.